Here we go. Welcome to the March 30th, 2022 Norfolk Planning Board meeting. This is Walter Byron, Planning Board Chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members of the board are with us this evening. So let me start with Chad Peck.
Here.
And Gary Searle.
Here.
Chris Monfort.
Here.
And let's see, who do I miss? John Weddleton, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's here with us. Okay. And Gary Sullivan, our associate member.
Here.
Okay. Also with us this evening is the town planner, Richard McCarthy, and our administrative assistant, Betsy Fajol.
Hey.
And maybe her cat later. We'll see. Okay, good evening. This open meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public hearings and public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely under these circumstances. For this planning board meeting, the meeting is convening via the Zoom application, which is posted on the town website identifying how the public may join. Please note the meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and that take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording.
Mute.
Just for the record this evening, all votes will be taken by roll call vote for the record. All right, well, that is an introduction. Let us turn to our first meeting on the agenda this evening, which is the public hearing for proposed changes to the Norfolk zoning bylaws, which have been submitted to the warrant for the May 10th, 2022 annual town meeting. Complete copies of the text and amendments are available for review in the on the Town of Norfolk website, www.norfolk.ma.us. Chris, would you be so kind as to read into the record the statement for the public hearing?
Yes. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Chapter 40A of the MGL that the Norfolk Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to discuss proposed changes to the Norfolk zoning bylaws, which have been submitted to the warrant for the 5/10/2022 annual town meeting. Complete copies of the text of the amendments are available for review on the Town of Norfolk website, www.norfolk.ma.us, or in the Planning Board office during the hours of 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday. This meeting shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be made utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software, https://zoom.us, meeting ID 926-699-9773 for remote access. The meeting will be recorded for future rebroadcast by Norfolk Community Television. The articles are as follows. 1, to see if the town of Norfolk will vote to amend the zoning bylaws, Section B, definitions by inserting a definition of nature center or take any action in relation thereto. 2, to see if the town of Norfolk will vote to amend the zoning bylaws section D2, schedule of use regulations by inserting D2A14, nature center, or take any action relative thereto. To see if the town of Norfolk will vote to amend the zoning bylaws section F7Q, municipal parking areas, by deleting the strike-through language and inserting new language in bold print, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk, or take any action in relation thereto. 4, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws section F5A, accessory buildings, with the new language in bold print, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk, or take any action in relation thereto. 5, to see if the town will vote to renumber their and recaption the zoning bylaw of the town by A, designating the zoning bylaw as Chapter 310 of the Code of Town of Norfolk, B, renumbering each section and subsequent subsection of the bylaw accordingly, C, inserting article, section, and subsection titles, and D, updating internal references to reflect the new numbering system. All is set forth in the final draft of the Code of the Town of Norfolk dated March 2022, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk, or take any action in relation thereto. 6, to see if the town will vote to adopt the following changes to the zoning bylaw as set forth in the final draft of the Code of the Town of Norfolk dated March 2022, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk, or take any action in relation thereto.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Rich, would you take us into this discussion, please?
Sure, thank you. In terms of the zoning bylaws this evening for you, there's two related to the recodification, and I'll probably start there first, and then I'll wait to the other articles that were sponsored by the plan. This evening we have Tom Harrington, Alexandra Rubin from Town Council's office, which will help go through that. We met this morning in terms of preparation for tonight's meeting. And one of the discussion points was the challenge in terms of getting everything between getting from E-code, getting to the planning board, getting to the warrant, getting to the advisory board, holding a public hearing, which resulted in the planning board not having the opportunity to see the changes prior to sponsoring the zoning articles that were submitted to the warrant back in February. So what the proposed remedy to this is to have town council will go through the changes. Hopefully, once planning board members have a sense of the text or the content of the changes, which are really intended to be ministerial, not substantive changes, or a couple that they'll talk about. The planning board be comfortable to sponsor these articles, for which would be referred to the select board to start the legislative process, which then would have the select board refer back to the planning board for a new public hearing. And then at that new public hearing, the planning board would ultimately make a recommendation. So coming out tonight, you're not going to necessarily make a recommendation to take a vote that would be presented to town meeting as your report. You'll hear a little bit more about it. We tried hard. Unfortunately, we weren't able to align all the timing. So in discussions this morning, we didn't want to have a potential procedural issue come up at the end if we're successful going all the way through and get this adopted by the AG's office. So this is a alternative solution to address the issue. We would ask the planning board to hold a special meeting towards the end of April, maybe first week in May. You don't need to really technically make your recommendation until the day of town meeting, but typically that's not the way we normally do it. It's already in advance, it's in the warrant, but in terms of the timing, we weren't able to pull that off. So that's in terms of the summary on that. There are other folks that are on, may be interested or hopefully interested in the recodification, but probably more interested in terms of the proposed changes with the addition of nature center to the table of allowable uses and the rationale and reasoning for that. So, Mr. Chairman, would you want to talk about those items first and then go to recodification afterwards?
No, let's stick with recodification. Let's get that under our belt. It's the main topic this evening.
Okay, all right. So then what I would do at this point, I would defer to Tom or Alexandra to kind of walk you through the purpose, intent, and what's involved with this recodification process.
Let me just say what my understanding of what has happened, which they can correct if I've got it wrong. The company was hired to reorganize the existing zoning bylaws and has done so and created a draft, and in the process of so doing has come up with a number of corrections that they've discovered as they went through the rewording and reorganizing. But none of those corrections are substantial and don't change the meaning of the zoning bylaws. And I read the list of corrections and kind of agree with that. As I see it, there's really nothing controversial here, but I may be wrong. So please, Town Council, take over and either confirm my belief or tell me I'm wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Tom Harrington, Town Council, and with me is Alexandra Rubin, who has been kind of the key driver on this project. So to start with, you are correct. You know, the intention, I think from the beginning, and this process started back in 2019, was so E-code and the underlying company is General Code. You know, their whole online product is they take a town's bylaws and they kind of put them into their format. And the idea is that, you know, their format is consistent and it can check for errors and it can check for bad citations. So it helps in keeping the bylaws up to date. And it also helps in that the kind of the look of your, but while the wording remains very much Norfolk, the look of your bylaws and the structure of them is kind of more standardized, so that, you know, particularly if you're used to looking at bylaws in other towns, you'll see more or less the same structure. And that helps kind of when we're trying to enforce them, because courts are used to this format. And it also helps, you know, when we go through the process of saying, okay, we want a new bylaw, let's look what other towns have. We now have, we can kind of dip into the E-code. There's 122 other towns, cities and towns in Massachusetts that use E-code. So now we have access to, you know, how they might do a new animal control bylaw or a new, you know, special permit for fill in the blank. So that's the use. Now, I have a PowerPoint that I can take you through, and the PowerPoint will discuss the changes generally. We've also provided you with a document called the Guide to Recodification, or what we call in the office the cheat sheet, which is, you know, it identifies each and every change in black, you know, kind of going along with the warrant article. And then in red, it explains why that change was made. And so I think that's kind of the most useful document. And so I guess I'm looking for a little guidance, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to take you through the PowerPoint, which discusses the changes generally, or would you like me to take you through the annotated warrant articles so we can get into the nitty gritty? Either is okay with me.
Well, let's see. We got to get the overview and make sure we understand it. In terms of the nitty gritty, unless you tell me that there's some stuff in the nitty gritty that we've really got to focus on because it does change something.
There is one.
Okay, then we'll focus on that. But I don't think we need to go through.
Okay.
All of
so we'll start with I'll do the PowerPoint, and then we're going to turn in it's the definition of family, and I want you to take a look at that because we think it's a necessary change, but people are going to see that as a substantive change, and so we want to make sure we're
okay. Go ahead.
You know, revealing that. Okay.
Yep.
Can I have screen sharing permission?
Yes. Where are you? Gotta find you.
Oh, I'm now a co-host. Okay, great. Hold on. Everyone can see that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so so the E-code process, it began with the zoning bylaws review team, which consists of the town planner, the building commissioner, the town administrator, and town council's office. So we're the ones that kind of went through this process. And again, our guiding principle was that we make no substantive changes, and anything that is such a change would be considered at a future meeting, so that we get the code in place, and then as we want to make real changes, we'll consider them in the future. And it's fair to say that along the way we had to make a lot of judgment calls, and so we're going to share some of those calls with you, and in particular the definition of family, so that you can see how that played out. And just kind of a quick piece on the process. So the E-code process is they take our bylaws, they take our recent town meeting votes, and they put them into their form. And then from there, they kind of go through and delete what's been repealed and make sure that whatever has been adopted by town meeting and approved by the Attorney General is then included. And so that's kind of the first two parts, the organizational analysis and the legislative evaluation. And then kind of part two of the legislative evaluation is kind of the real part that we pay for. And E-code has a team of attorney editors and legal editors who review and analyze our bylaws for conflicts, duplications, inconsistencies, and compliance with statutory requirements. From that, they send us a list of a number of questions, and the questions are, here's a bad site. Do you want us to delete this site and insert this site? Would you just want us to delete this site? It's kind of 2 or 3 prongs, and that's where the team decides what to do. We would choose one of the prongs. Sometimes the prong was, to the town, what should we do with this? You write what you want it to say. And on some occasions we did that, but usually we went with their prongs. And so once they do that, then they produce a draft, and that draft came out to, it's general and zoning, it's 516 pages. And E-code and the general code are not without their flaws. And I would say, to me, the kind of most disappointing part was they don't produce a red line draft. Why they don't, I don't know. We asked them for one, and they wanted us to send them a lot more money to do so, because they felt like it was outside of their purview. So we didn't do it, but we like E-code, but we don't love them. So we're past that. We've now got this draft, and we're at the code adoption phase. So we need to get your approval. We need to get town meeting's approval. We need to get the Attorney General's approval. And then we will be delivered both hard copies of the code, but more importantly, a kind of a very sophisticated and slick online interface.
So
Okay.
about 1/3. We're not the lead duck on this. We're about 1/3 of the towns and cities in Massachusetts have done this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it should go down easily once it gets up to the Attorney General, should it not?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we've checked with them to say, and I've done the E-code process in another town too, but we checked with them to say, this is how you like it. You've seen this before. And they're fine with the way, it's the way E-code always does it. And the Attorney General is comfortable with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So to start with, our zoning bylaw will now become Chapter 310 of the Code of the Town of Norfolk. So the entire bylaw, zoning bylaw, will be in Chapter 310. And from there, that they have realigned it. They renumber each section and subsection accordingly. They've inserted article, section, and subsection titles, and they've updated internal references to reflect the new numbering system, so that when a bylaw, has a reference to another bylaw, those have all been corrected and updated. Here are some of the typical corrections. Town treasurer is now treasurer collector. Building inspector is building commissioner. Town planner is director of planning and land use. Highway department is DPW, and the highway superintendent is the director of public works. And references to water commissioner have been changed to select board. And so kind of note here, sometimes Norfolk used the old term and changed the term. And sometimes I think when we were borrowing bylaws from other towns, we kept their nomenclature in place without replacing it with ours. So there's kind of two levels of changes there. Here, you know, the Board of Appeals, we refer to it as the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's now standardized throughout. No more chairman, no more chairperson, just chair. There's a number of stale sites to state agencies. One of them is there's no longer an outdoor advertising authority. It's now the Outdoor Advertising Board. No DPW superintendent, again, director of public works. We don't have a design review committee. We have a design review board. And the Department of Food and Agriculture is now the Department of Agricultural Resources. And as these change in the future, E-code will notify us of those changes and, you know, set us up to make the necessary changes. So, you know, when you have a stale site in a bylaw, it's never good, especially if you have to enforce it in court, because, you know, you've automatically got something wrong, and sometimes it can be difficult to get the judge to go along with you. So that's a plus for us, particularly from the legal side of things. Okay, so so again, under the not substantive changes, this is the type of change that you'll see in the bylaw. So it's a wording change, and you know, it's to clarify. So I think if you kind of take a second to read this, it reads better than it did. You know, that or should have been an and. When it said no new tenancy except, it felt a little blank. So the insertion of shall be established cleans that up. So again, making things read better, but hopefully not changing the meaning. Okay, the second definition of impervious surface, which originally read natural or man-made materials or structures on or above or below ground, blah, 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 is repealed. So there were two definitions of impervious surface, and so they were identical, and so we just deleted one. Same with outdoor storage. There were two definitions. There's just a part in the code where sometimes things were repeated. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if it happened at town meeting or just in the adoption or printing of the bylaw, but however it happened, we've fixed it. We've never had a zoning enforcement authority, so we repealed, we're taking that out. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Okay, so more examples of deletions. This, where we deleted a parking space, shall be a minimum of 9 feet by 19 feet. It said it twice. So it repeated itself in that section of the bylaw. So we deleted it. Amended to delete references to ordinance or ordinances. Ordinances are typically associated with cities, not towns. So I suspect we kind of got that when we borrowed something from a city, but we've corrected it to make it consistently bylaw throughout. Mm-hmm. I talked about this one already, so I must have missed that last slide. Sorry about that. Do you see black when I do that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I'm sorry about that. Oh, that's where it's, okay, that's where it ends. All right, so I'm gonna stop this screen share and then go to the recodification guide. And Alex, that definition that we're looking for is right at the end, right? Okay.
Yep, it's right at the end of the last page.
Okay. Okay, so this is page 7 of the guide to recodification. And, if you look just to start at the top of page 7, this is again, just commenting that it's changing ordinance to bylaw because there's no ordinances. And, I talked about these using consistent terms throughout. In the marijuana bylaw, the proper term is recreational establishment. The proper term is marijuana establishment. So we changed that. So that this is just keeping up. But I want to draw your attention to Article 22, where we do think it's a substantive change. And that's the definition of family. And so we'll tell you why we made the change. So the current definition is one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit and living as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit. That's okay, provided that a group of 5 or more persons who are not within the second degree of kinship shall not be deemed to constitute a family. So there is a Supreme Court case out of Ohio that said we can't use degrees of kinship to define a family. That's being too restrictive. So we've changed this to what's a more standard definition to read one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit who are living together as a bona fide, stable and committed living unit, being a traditional family unit or the functional equivalent thereof, exhibiting the generic character of a traditional family. So this is a approved and accepted definition of family that gets out, kind of the bloodline and degree of kinship language, but it is a change. And so kind of worthy of your consideration, whether you want to go forward with it or leave it the same. My one caution would be, if we get challenged on the definition of family, I think the court will definitely throw out the second part where it describes the second degree of kinship. I don't think we can.
Where did this new definition come from?
Do you know the answer to that, Alex?
Yeah, so eCode suggested that definition based on an amalgamation of bylaws that they've seen in other communities in Massachusetts. And this is what they had suggested as one that they felt that would be approved by the Attorney General's office.
Well, that's the next question. Has this version of that definition been approved previously by the Attorney General's office for some other town or city?
I don't think eCode would have suggested it if it hadn't. I didn't ask them specifically which town it came from and when the approval was, but they had given us a couple of options in terms of definitions that they feel very strongly would be approved by the AG.
We can follow up with the AG though and just double check that to make sure that they've seen it before.
Yeah, I think we ought to go forward with a definition. Now, this is just my version. The rest of the board could have a different opinion, but we ought to go forward with a definition that has previously been blessed by the Attorney General.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can email them this week. So that's I think, Mr. Chair, that's all I have to show you. I guess I'd encourage the board to, at their leisure, just flip through the guide, but I trust you'll come to the same conclusion that we did, that other than that last change, the rest of it is really just cleaning up bad wording, by bad I just mean unclear. And then just making the generic changes that we discussed so that we're referring to our boards and officers in the right way.
Well, you could even characterize this particular change as cleaning it up, because it has been demonstrated that the existing definition won't pass muster with the Attorney General.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just quickly looked up that definition, and I can tell you that it's the same definition as the town of Lancaster, and that had been approved by the Attorney General's office.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging, but I would
We'll still run it by the AG.
That is encouraging. Thank you for that. All right.
I have a question.
Questions from board members?
Yes, around the term traditional family, does that get defined anywhere, or does it need to?
It does not. And I think it's a little open, which I think allows our zoning enforcement officer and our zoning board to apply kind of some local standards to that.
Well, considering the state of politics in the country, it would not be surprising that definition gets challenged by some citizen for some reason, and we need to be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from other board members? Well, any questions from the public out there in our audience this evening? Well, looks like you've done a pretty good job of explaining it then.
So then my question to the board.
Oh, okay, Gary.
That's Rich, but that's all right.
Oh, Rich, I'm sorry.
Would the board be comfortable enough to sponsor it? Because it's like the old, well, I'm dating myself, but it's got a bill with no sponsor at the moment. So, and then if you're okay with that, then it goes, like I said, it would go to the select board and then come back to you for a new hearing, which case then you would actually formally take a vote to recommend or not.
Yeah. Well, test it with the board here. If you are willing to sponsor it down the road at the next meeting or a subsequent meeting to the April 12th meeting, just show your hand here. Chris is not putting his hand up, so he's got some questions, obviously, still.
Yeah, I'm just concerned around the traditional family piece. For me, I want to make sure we're not excluding something that someone might not consider traditional without getting into the politics of that, until we can, speak directly about that piece. I don't think I can say that I would vote for it. But
other than that, are you okay with all the rest of it?
Yeah, everything else is fine.
Okay. All right. Well, then as you query the Attorney General's office, perhaps you could, or E-code, take a look at some other definitions that might be broader or whatever that might help us get to the point where we can endorse this. Because it sounds like we're like Ivory Soap, 99 and 77. And 44% are there, but we still got the little bit of trouble.
Mr. Chair, could I just direct a question to Chris? So you're looking for something that would be a little more encompassing in defining a family.
I don't necessarily need it to define it to individual units per se. Right. I just want to make sure that it's not left up to the individual as a responsibility who may feel a certain way, and then another person comes after that and they feel a certain way about a different group. Okay. I want to make sure that we're being fair and we're including and making sure that we're making Norfolk a welcoming place for all types of families.
Okay, I understand.
Are you saying that the word traditional is either restrictive or not inclusive of non-traditional structured families?
Not at all. I'm saying it's too ambiguous that it leaves it up to
Yes,
the
okay.
authority.
Okay, good.
All right, Rich, are you satisfied with that?
Well, let's see. So I understand the point. So in terms of, is there enough majority to send a sponsorship, or is there not? And then I would then ask the select board to sponsor it, to send it back to the planning board for.
Well, yeah, you heard the board say that it's fine, with the exception of that definition that we've got to wrestle to the ground. But
was it 3 of you that said that?
no, only one.
4.
Oh, yes.
So 4 yes, 1 take care of that.
Yeah.
Rich, should we have them take a formal vote?
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. If you don't mind, sorry. No way.
I think it's premature to take a formal vote until we get this definition wrestled to the ground.
I agree.
Not only just a sponsorship, not. But if you don't want to, I understand the point.
No, I don't want to take a vote to sponsor it until we get that definition wrestled to the ground. I mean, it's the last little thing that we've got to get comfortable with, and at the moment we're not.
Is it too late to separate it out and, vote on the former and leave that to decision?
No, in fact, we could even amend it on the floor to do that if we had to.
Yeah, so I think what Rich is saying is, because of the timelines in the statute and because of the kind of slightly arcane process required by 40A, these amendments need to be first referred to the select board and then referred back to the planning board. And once it's referred back to the planning board, then we're going to need to have the hearing. And so I think we just need a sponsor to send it to the select board, or the select board is willing to sponsor it, is our understanding, so that they can send it to you. But we need to get that process rolling in time for our town meeting.
All right. Given that description, what's the temper of the board here? Are we willing to sponsor it to the select board and have them subsequently pass it back to us for endorsement? In the meantime, which we can wrestle with this definition?
Yes.
Yes.
So Gary is yes. John?
John, you're on mute.
You're on mute, I think, John. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Walter, I didn't hear you. What was that?
Yeah. Okay. I say, are you at this point, despite the fact that we have one definition that we still need to wrestle to the ground, are you willing to indicate to the select board that we would sponsor this set of changes, allowing them to pass it back to us for full endorsement at a later planning board meeting?
Yeah, I have no problem sponsoring it, because, I mean, these bylaws in my 20 years here have been dire in need of change. And if you go through the hundreds of pages of bylaws, anybody, Chris, Gary, anybody, you're probably going to find a lot of things in there that you still don't agree with. And this is just one that was brought to our attention. So I know there's a bunch in the bylaw language that I don't agree with either. But I mean, generally speaking, we're adopting our whole change to make our bylaws in compliance with the law and make them easier to use. So I have no objection to that.
All right, thank you. Chad?
I would support sponsoring it as long as we still continue to research this last little piece here on the definition of family. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Chris?
I feel similarly to Chad. I want to make sure that we, get that taken care of.
Right.
And
Okay.
I do
So
not want to provide enforcement until that happens.
fair enough. Okay. It sounds, and Gary, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I guess I might only ask the town council and associate that I think, unlike going before the Supreme Court, having an incorrect or ambiguous word here doesn't end up with someone in jail.
Yeah.
What is the nth most implication of the word traditional in this case? We're not going to evict people from their houses, right? So I'm just wondering what are the repercussions of having a bad word in our language that's acceptable in all the other towns by the AG?
Yeah, understood. So again, you're willing to sponsor this?
Yes, I am.
Select board with that one caveat. Yeah, okay.
Yes, I am.
Gary Sullivan, what do you think, sir?
Yeah, I support this. I'm a big fan of E-Code's work. So,
all right. Well, there you are, Rich. The board is willing to sponsor it to the select board to have them pass it back to us for endorsement at a subsequent meeting.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
With that one caveat.
Yep, we heard that one loud and clear.
yeah.
I can get back to you on what we can poll you in terms of a good date to meet. We would do it virtually again to make it easier.
Yes, I think so. All right, now Rich, back to the other smaller changes, but equally important.
Walter, we do have, oh, I was going to say somebody had their hand up, but
I'm sorry, please go ahead. Who is it?
It's Renata from Mass Audubon.
Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify that there's still opportunity for public comment on the Nature Center question. That wasn't what you were just voting to proceed on.
Yeah, we haven't got to that yet. We're just about to get to it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Sure. Hang in there. All right, Rich, take us through the remaining zoning articles, please.
Sure. So in terms of context, Kyle Pribish, who is the manager of Leland Weil, which is the former Norfolk Airport property, had approached us in terms of town staff about their long range and short-term and long-range plans for the property to, over time, evolve it into, I'll call outdoor, environmental, open space, different environmental type uses of the property. And at the same time, they're working towards becoming a 501c3 environmental foundation. And in terms of the R3 zoning district, there was limitations within the table of allowable uses for which they could do some of the things they would like to do in the short term and long term in terms of the property. So we had discussed the processes by which zoning could go before town meeting. It's a petition as a property owner, sponsorship by boards, select board, planning board, zoning board. And so then we discussed the idea of coming before the planning board to talk about, to see if we could, the goals of and the purpose of the zoning change made a lot of sense for the benefit of town of Norfolk as a whole, to see if we could work together as opposed to doing it as a citizen petition, which has kind of its trip ups in terms of it's a citizen petition, how much flexibility there is to try to make changes, which really isn't. It comes in and, it's thumbs up, thumbs down, kind of, more or less. I mean, some changes could be made, but it comes in as it comes in. There's not really the ability to work with it. So then we came before the planning board, and the planning board agreed that it made some sense. So we crafted a definition in terms of nature center and talked about some of the different things they would like to do on the property, setting some parameters and standards in there. And so that one piece of this is creating the definition of nature center. And then the second piece is adding it to the table of allowable uses. And then the third piece, which they would benefit from in terms of parking. So in terms of our zoning bylaws, it's pretty rigid in terms of what options you have. It's pretty much you have to have paved surfaces. So while I will tell you that if you go around town, you'll see town properties that are not paved. Technically, the only ones that have the ability right now in the bylaws is the park and recreation property that's on Pond Street. The rest of them should have been paved. As we know, that really doesn't make good sense from context from environmental. So one of the changes to give the planning board some more latitude in terms of parking, how that gets done, arrangement, surfaces, and so forth to kind of better fit parking, that off-street parking for some of these open space areas in town for people to go to and enjoy, as well as get in and out of their vehicles safely. So that would be applicable to what they're trying to do out at the former Norfolk Airport property, but as well as it would benefit the town of Norfolk as a whole as well. And part of that last fall discussion, we met with folks from Mass Audubon, who has developed, a trail on their property from North Street down to Marshall Street, and wanted to have parking available for their users to be able to park on the other side. And within the bylaw, it needed to be paved. So the thought being that it really didn't make sense for them as well. So with that change, they would be the beneficiary as we try to work with Mass Audubon to develop that parking. So I know there has been some commentary relative to the change, how it affects Mass Audubon. So I know there's certainly a bunch of folks here to comment on that. The question there, I think some people would like to see some modifications to this proposal. And so I know town council didn't leave me, right? You're here with us still, Tom?
I'm here.
Okay. So there may be some scope questions that come up that, people would like to talk about. I think everybody supports this idea, but the finished product, there are some concerns and some questions as it relates to Mass Audubon. I will say, there might be a difference of opinion in terms of, I kind of viewed, and maybe I viewed incorrectly, that Mass Audubon has the protection under the Dover Amendment as a nonprofit, which does have educational use. There might be folks from Mass Audubon disagreeing and perhaps suggesting they're not exempt. So if that were to be if that is the result, then, some of the protections I thought they would have may not exist. So that might move this conversation in a different direction. But I think the thought being that they are, the way their nonprofit status was, that they would fall under the Dover Amendment, but maybe that's not the case. So if that's the case, there may be issues in terms of Mass Audubon. It wasn't intended to create more headaches and heartburn for Mass Audubon. It was to try to help another piece of property which I think has similar values and goals, that is for the benefit of the town of Norfolk and others. So I'll leave it there, and then
Okay, well, I think, thank you, Rich. I think the board has seen this and discussed it in the past, and pretty much approved what we've got written in front of us here. However, I'll give the board members opportunity to comment or ask questions or whatever at this point before we open it up to the public.
Walter, just one question for town council, if I may.
Sure.
Isn't Mass Audubon grandfathered and does not have to abide by this new bylaw?
So that would be my understanding. You mean for their facility in Norfolk?
Correct.
Yeah, that would be my understanding.
But then again, if this bylaw added additional benefits that they don't currently have, wouldn't they be able to join in those new benefits, such as unpaved parking spots?
I think they would, yeah. So as Rich pointed out, and we did help Rich draft it, this was meant to create a more permissive atmosphere, not a more restrictive atmosphere.
Yeah. Right.
So in that regard, for Mass Autobody, they're grandfathered to anything that's more encumbering, and they also get the benefit of any new features of this bylaw that they don't currently have.
Yeah, without knowing exactly what they're doing out there, and certainly not wanting to step into the shoes of the building inspector, I believe you're correct.
Thank you. That's all.
Anyone else on the board have a comment or?
I was privy to the conversations that were happening in the social media area, and I'm just curious. There was a mention around a permit for events. And in reviewing the bylaw, I don't see anything to that effect. Rich, can you confirm that there's nothing with regards to having a permit for a special event or anything of the like that would require a fee to be paid to the town or approval for said event? And if there is, where I might be able to find it in our shared folder.
So should we put up on the screen
Please.
I can, so hold on, I'll share. So I suspect, I'm thinking that they're referencing F, a charge for admission and or fees for services provided. I'm not sure. I think somebody else probably would have to answer that.
So to me, the way that reads is essentially if the property requested a fee for access to the property, such as like a membership, like a trustees or an Audubon membership, that would be covered under F.
Right.
Okay.
I think probably the bigger, I suspect, if anything, it's probably the last one, which says there shall not be include rental or use of the property for outside persons or entities for parties, weddings, or similar events, I guess. So if I wanted to, have my wedding at Mass Audubon, or in this case, I guess if this goes through Leland Wild, like I couldn't do it. Maybe that's what the objection is. I'm not sure, but.
Well, we'll give them an opportunity to tell us here in a minute or two. Okay, any further questions by board members or points or comments? Hearing none, then let us open it up to who else in the audience would like to ask a question or make a comment. I can't see all the hands raised, so someone, maybe
Tim,
Rich, you can see.
Tim Holmes.
Go ahead, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is, sorry, I'm gonna step into another room so I'm not feedbacking. This is Tim, live down on North Street by Stony Brook. So the previous question that was just discussed about the planning board, I think was nixed from the document that you have here. There was previously an H that I don't see listed here. Is that correct, that that's changed?
Yeah, what's being proposed is what's in front of you there.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat now. The document that I had an H on the list. That's not on the list now. So that's an easy one to clarify then. So I would still want, some clarification as to why there couldn't be rentals on this property, like with any other nonprofit landowning entity.
Which property are you referring to, sir?
So it's my understanding at this time that this is only applying to Leland Wild, right? Everyone agrees on that?
Yeah, that's what everybody agrees to. In terms of, I think Kyle is probably on with us too. I know we discussed it. So this wasn't done in isolation in terms of what they're looking to do out there. So it was it's part of the discussion what they thought they wanted to do and try to craft something around that. So they had their own counsel take a look at it, and they were comfortable with what's being proposed. So
it just seems a little heavy-handed from the start here. If there were to be other, quote unquote nature centers where this would be applying to, I don't see why we would need to have that listed in here.
Well, I think it's kind of if anything, these are, let's try to strike some balance, because when everything goes well, it goes well. When everything goes bad, it can go bad. And so there was to try to provide some opportunity, but have some limitations on restrictions. Yeah, they call them restrictions. I understand that. And C, it's not to say that this couldn't be changed, but to start somewhere, it was a starting point to come to consensus on a way to define the use or to provide some opportunities for it.
Yeah, it's fair. It just seems incongruent with other nonprofits in town. Like a church is obviously going to have weddings, you know, and if someone wanted to have a wedding in an outdoor space like beautiful Leland Wild and donate, you know, $1,000 to their cause, I don't see why they wouldn't want to have that opportunity, you know, from the get-go, whether or not they choose to go there or not down the road.
Yeah. So the church definitely can, and that again, that's one of the ones that we talked about, the Dover Amendment. So they're not subject to the same type of regulations. But so this was, like I said, developed in concert with each other. So it wasn't as if, you know, there wasn't dialogue. So they were okay with this. So
Tim, I'm not clear. Are you speaking as representing one of the groups that would like to have this article go forward, or you're speaking as a citizen?
I'm speaking as a citizen who's reading bylaw changes that are being proposed.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Tim.
This is Kyle Prebish. I do have something to add, since I think the last copy I saw also had the section that Tim's referring to. So my last understanding was if Leland Wild wanted to have any sort of fundraising event, that we would have to go through a permitting process. So since this has been removed since I have last seen anything, is that the current case? I'm just looking for confirmation. It looks like it, looking at this.
Yeah, this what you see in front of you is what's being proposed. Rich, what did Section H read in an earlier draft?
I have to pull it up. Just hold on.
I put it in the chat.
Oh, in the chat.
Community building or fundraising events by a nonprofit entity subject to written approval by the planning board.
Okay. Right.
Yep. Yeah, we did delete that from the previous version to what's presently before you.
Yep. Okay. I got it.
Great. I appreciate what Tim's saying. I don't want to say anything to stop this from going forward unless there's some way in which Leland Wild can support Audubon moving forward, because we think they're obviously a wonderful organization to look up to, and I think we've worked well with them in the past. But I appreciate Tim thinking about different ways in which we could collect fees down the road, and I think there's room to still do that within this. We never intended nor intend to be a wedding venue, but there are some fundraising events or ways in which to bring in money that, you know, again, that would be nice, but I want to take what we can also get to be able to do something. It's been a long road to here.
Could you put that article back up again?
Sure. Let me go back to yeah, I'm gonna.
I think I'm going to need Tom's help on this question also.
And to be clear, I don't even have a current or near future idea of a fundraising event. We're privately funded and there isn't a current need for that, but might we someday down the road, as I discussed in previous meetings, have a need to, I don't know, maybe better support some environmental education program that could use some extra funding? Absolutely. So I like the flexibility of being able to do that.
Yeah, just bear with me. I'm got some screen sharing issues. Okay.
Thank you, Rich. Just to be clear, the talk was that you'd have to charge a fee for certain activities. And where is?
It's under F.
All right, yeah, okay, so the thing, the use may include, not must, may. So basically a charge for admission fees and services provided, and that's at the option of the nonprofit entity. So you can charge one or not, so there's no way that it's ever required. But what I don't understand is that the use may include the following, and then at the end it says, this use shall not include rental or use of the properties by outside persons or entities, blah, 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 blah. So does that mean you cannot rent or use these facilities for other things?
That's the way I would read it, John.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
So basically this is disallowing the rental use and parties, weddings, or similar events. So if they wanted to have one, as they said previously in the bylaw, it says they may charge, but now they're disallowing these type of events. And do we want to disallow these type of events? And I could see these type of events needing to be approved by the select board, because every event on Town Hill has to be approved by them, just so it doesn't get out of hand for the neighbors. But I wonder if this needs some work, this sentence here.
Yeah, I agree, John. I think that it's very restrictive, and if it was similar to how things are approved on Town Hill, I think that would be a good modification to this.
These big events, Chad, for outside parties, that's something that's normally controlled, whether it be the food wagons on Town Hill or whatever. That's normally controlled with some type of a permit from the selectman's office. So maybe this line here shouldn't disallow these things, but just require some type of a permit, just like anything else being used for private use for town property. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, I understand where you're going with that. So I think, so I'm trying to, is Town Hill town-owned property, or is it privately owned?
Town-owned.
The town owns Town Hill.
Okay, so so I assume then that the select board has the care, custody, management, and control of that. So that's why they control it.
Yep.
I guess I'm not sure about having them be the authority to hold a party here.
Well, if you have a block party, or if you have a Christmas party on your own subdivision, all of that requires a okay from the Board of Selectmen.
Right. So that if you're using town land like a public way, you need permission to use that town land for a party. And if you're going to get a one-day liquor license, you need the select board to issue that. I do think there's ways to, so I think under this, because this is private property, and I think there would be ways for them to hold parties there without the select board approval, if that's what they were looking for.
This would be no different than having a graduation party in your backyard, would it?
Yeah, but you don't need the select board's permission to.
Exactly.
Right.
Correct.
So, yeah.
If you sold liquor, you'd need the permission, but nothing else.
Correct.
So shouldn't
I think that last sentence is trying to protect the town from having like an outdoor wedding venue created under a nonprofit called a nature center, and then have them just continuously have weddings over weekend, and then maybe a couple educational things during the week. It seems like something that could technically be easily abused, but this verbiage looks to keep that from happening. It's not to say that we can't think of a creative way to resolve that.
And I guess are the proponents looking to use this as a wedding venue, or is the concern that they just want to be able to hold the occasional fundraising event?
I mean, I can speak for Leland Wild. We're not this isn't intended to be a wedding venue. Our goals are conservation, stewardship, environmental education, and wellness. If there's an opportunity to raise funds for something in the future, which, as I mentioned, we don't have a current need, but there could be a future need, then we'd love to be less restricted. Of course, we've always been respectful of the neighborhood, always from day one. I think we don't want to be responsible for supporting something to go through that hurts current and successful appropriate behavior by any of our allies, such as Audubon. So I think there's some discussion there, and I'll let Audubon chime in if they are ready to do so. But to answer your question directly, we don't intend to be a wedding venue by any means. You know, but to someone else's point about having a wedding, a family wedding in your backyard, or a graduation party or a birthday party, those are things that, you know, anyone else can do. I understand this is a different piece of land, so that's where it's above my pay grade.
Let's hear from the representative from the Audubon, please. We'll get to the rest of you who've raised questions, but hang in there.
Hi, thank you. It's Lauren Gordon on behalf of Mass Audubon Stony Brook. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm happy to see that some of the concerns that we had with the language have been changed, specifically around the community fundraising piece, as well as the caretaker piece. You know, I did just briefly wanted to speak about the rental space, that last line, and give you just a couple examples of how this has worked, at Stony Brook. And I want to start off by saying, we are very supportive of the work that Kyle is doing. We recently found out about this bylaw change just 2 weeks ago when it was presented to us. And we want to just let you know that we are super supportive of what Kyle is trying to do with Leland Wilds. She has been an advocate to Mass Audubon, an advocate for, environmental education, and a partner and collaborated with us for years. So we're very supportive of what she's trying to do, but we do feel that this is really restrictive, and our concerns just with future uses that this could impact. I know we're saying that, Mass Audubon can fall back on the Dover Amendment, but we do have some concerns on how people interpret, the language around this and making it a governing bylaw. So I just want to talk briefly about a couple of the ways that the rental space has been used at Stony Brook, and potential future uses that Kyle is interested in, and that is, we have hosted hundreds of children's birthday parties at Stony Brook. It's been a huge part of camp kids coming up and having their birthday parties there, that would be considered a rental space. We've also, rented our space to other local community groups, such as Boy Scout troops and Girl Scout troops when they're doing their, bridge ceremony. They've used the Stony Brook space. We've rented it for yoga classes and bird clubs, and as well as using it for classroom space for outdoor environmental education classrooms for schools that wanted to come in and use some classroom space. We've also hosted, baby showers, and recently we did host a small wedding reception for a camper turned camp staff member turned seasonal staff member at Stony Brook. It was a really small wedding, but what was really interesting about that was, while, the weddings and baby showers are not the main focus of our work, the children and adults who chose to have their birthday parties and, host these significant life events at Stony Brook did so because of their deep connection to the work that we did. These are people who grew up coming to Stony Brook as community members, became camp, kids, became staff members, and are really connected to the land. And it was something that was really special and beautiful to be able to, have a camp kid come back to Stony Brook and get married there. So while it's not a big focus, and we're not looking to be a wedding venue, and I don't believe Kyle's looking for that either, nature has this power over people that, they, especially during COVID, where people have wanted to come out and do these things. So our concern is that, writing this into a bylaw makes it really restrictive. And we think that it's a really, kind of strong way of doing this, and we're concerned by making it part of a governing bylaw for the town, and how we operate the nature center. We've been part of the fabric of Norfolk since the 1960s. We take pride in being part of the community here. We follow, at Stony Brook, we followed all of the building department, fire department, and health department rules and regulations and really try to support and be one with the community. So it's just, we felt like this was a really, kind of strong arm way to allow another nature center in and to put these really tight regulations over what's happening in a nature center. Thank you.
Lauren, I have a quick question. At any point in time, did you solicit a rental fee, or is the fee considered a donation to the Mass Audubon?
So all of our programs and all of the events we do are considered kind of fundraising and community building events. So we do, for some of the community partners, they have paid for usage space, and that covers having a staff member there. So it covers the cost of us, staying late and having somebody there to do an after hours type event. So we have, accepted money for those, both the birthday parties as well as the, evening programs. And it's a low fee. We try to keep it really low so that, it is something that a PTA group or a Boy Scout group can afford, and it just covers our costs of renting out the space and having.
So it's more appropriate to call it a donation in my mind.
Yeah.
It's more of a keep the lights on donation, extension of normal operating hours. And on the website, there's no page that says these are the fees that we would charge for similar events. You're not soliciting anything. You're not going into magazines saying, hey, host your wedding.
Yeah, so we don't do that for weddings, but we do have a fee for birthday parties, and we do have a fee for a rental space, and it's considered a community rental space. Okay. But we do charge a fee for that on our website.
So Town Council, I'm curious if by changing the terminology from fee to donation, does that absolve them from, and Leland Farms from this portion of the bylaw creatively?
Sorry, I was on mute. Lauren, do you think it cures your problem?
I think it goes into how it's, my question would be, would we have to call it a donation, or would we be able to keep it, the way we have it now? It's a fee for service. When you look at our page, this is the rental fee. This is the birthday party fee. So my question would be, would we have to change that to, this is the, donation fee for a birthday party? Right.
So I think that my struggle
I'm
would
thinking
be
of it in mind with like what the museums do. It's a recommended donation of X amount, and so you provide that guideline. 99% of the individuals who go there are paying that suggested donation fee. And, if it's good enough for government museums, I think it might, work here in this instance as well.
The other issue I would see with calling it a donation is that it's not considered, it wouldn't be considered a tax deductible donation, because you're getting a service for, the service provided is the space, the service provided is hosting the birthday party. So as far as like tax law is concerned, it wouldn't be considered a donation.
Well, that's a good point.
As far as tax law is concerned, if you're getting a fee for the use of something with value, it isn't by law a deduction anyway. So, but aside from when that young lady spoke from Stony Brook, it sort of makes sense. I never realized that much was going on up there, and it's gone on seamlessly. And as the board talked about a different type of rental concerns from outsiders renting their pool or their house for a weekend or that, we decided to not legislate that because it's been running okay. I think this is the same case. I think that there's no need to put restrictive language in here, but we have a track record from this nonprofit, running seamlessly. So I would be in favor of taking out that sentence to not include rental uses or use of the property by outside persons, because obviously they've been handling it perfectly.
Yeah, and I think, as John said earlier in the discussion, the intent here is to make it more free, not more restrictive. And so that sentence does make it more restrictive. So John is proposing that we strike that. The process, Rich, let me direct this question to you. The process is still flexible enough for us to amend this language, is it not?
It is. Yeah. So
yeah. Right. Okay. All right, so how do other board members feel about striking that sentence?
I support that.
I would as well.
Yeah, and as would I. All right,
Walter,
then.
We have another hand up in the audience.
Indeed, we do. Yes, let's hear. And there may be more than one. I don't know. Go ahead, Rich. You turn that individual loose so we can hear her.
So it's Regan.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, Regan Milani. I live at 38 Medway Street. And I just wanted to bring up, because the language does seem to be focused on a nature center, which is a generic term, but it seems to be focused on one property. But I've seen also on social media, and I am relatively new to Norfolk, but I would assume that there are other parcels, especially with historic properties, that may be of preservation interest in the town. And the Trustees of Reservations, for example, has a property in Canton where I actually have my wedding reception, the Bradley Estate. So they do, it's a environmental nonprofit. They have hiking trails, and they are a land trust, but they rent out that property for weddings. And especially for myself, I've worked in conservation, my entire career, and nature is very important to me. And it was really a wonderful opportunity to be able to host my wedding reception at this particular nature center. So it really, in a beautiful historic building that had historical significance. And we did pay a fee. And as Lauren mentioned, that yes, you cannot call it a donation if you get a fee for service. So even if you purchase something like a mug, at a nonprofit, you can only tax deduct anything that's above and beyond the item that you get. So it would be considered a rental and not a donation for use of the property. So I guess I'm just interested in, other entities other than just the Leland or other than just Audubon, if there's other land trusts that were interested in preserving some of the open space and nature in Norfolk. I wouldn't want them to be limited by potential opportunities to fund those opportunities. Because as we know, like granting can be so restrictive, funding for purchasing open space is so restrictive. So, any mechanism to be able to allow Norfolk residents to have forest is so important to climate change mitigation. It provides us clean water and clean air. So if there are existing buildings that might be rented for something, I would, as a Norfolk resident, I would speak against us. And I'm kind of glad that you've already started to suggest that we strike the language from this bylaw.
Do we need a motion to do that, Walter?
Pardon me?
We need a motion to delete that.
Yeah,
sentence.
I think we do, but let's make sure there's no one else in the audience who might want to comment before we take the motion, John. Is there anyone else out there who has raised their hand? Rich, I can't see them all.
No, I don't see anybody else.
This is Kyle Purge again. I don't have my hand raised, but I just wanted to say for anyone listening from the neighborhood, from the town, again, we've always looked to Audubon. They have done things really, really well. And we wouldn't have been able to do things well for the last 8 years without looking up to organizations like Audubon or the trustees or different land trusts in the area, Wildlands Trust. So I just wanted to reassure people that that's our aspiration, to operate as seamlessly and as supportive as those organizations.
Thank you. All right, at this point, Chair will entertain a motion to delete.
Walter.
Oh, sorry. We got more hands. I didn't see them. Go ahead. Rich, let one in.
So I think it was Donna Jones. I know there's another person, but I think it was Donna next.
Thank you. Donna Jones, North Street, one of the residents that supports the staff of Mass Audubon, Stony Brook. A question about there's one change requested for adding a definition of nature center. Is that going to be a different vote from paved parking required?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
In general, the function of the planning board using virtual meetings, do you enter what is in the chat as part of the meeting minutes?
No.
No, don't.
Okay. Just in this case, this meeting, people are making comments in the chat, and I wanted them to understand that if they have an opinion, they should voice it.
Indeed, they should. But those comments in the chat will not be in the minutes. No.
So scrolling through the comments, I know Tim had community building or fundraising events, nonprofit, so subject to written approval of the planning board. So that was removed. We touched on that in the prior version. The next comment was, that seems much more reasonable. Then Regan said, you cannot call it a donation if you get something for a fee. It's not tax deductible under the law. And she did cover that last in her comments. Problem is the written cannot have wedding parties, more so the fee versus donation. Agree with all. And that was the chat comments. I'm not aware of any other trustees or reservation owning property in the town of Norfolk. Perhaps they do, but not aware of that at the moment. I don't think this precludes them from doing it in the future. I guess anyway, I'm not aware of trustees of reservation owning a property with any buildings on it and or actually land holdings onto themselves currently.
But this does not prohibit such future happenings where some piece of property could be put into that condition and situation, and they could operate under this bylaw.
Yeah, correct. I don't see why they couldn't.
Yeah.
This is Donna. I just want to finish by saying thank you for everybody coordinating with this to support the wonderful nature we have here in town. I do appreciate that point H was removed, and appreciate your willingness to modify what we see on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Donna. All right, who's next?
Jessica W.
Yes, hi, Jessica Watson at 21 Castle, Norfolk resident. I'm coming in a little bit late, so I hear that there were some modifications that were made, but I did want to speak and share my experience with Stony Brook, Mass Audubon, as a former employee and as a community member with my family, often traveling or going to this nature center. I can speak from experience at the Fall Fair and such events where we invite where Mass Audubon invites the community is invaluable and something truly unique to Norfolk. And to put a bylaw or to restrict it in any way financially, I think really prevents that sort of community happening. So I'm glad to hear that there were some modifications, and I really feel very strongly that this is a wonderful, unique attribute of Norfolk, Massachusetts. And I would hate to see us in any way impact this place of community and beauty. As we all know, it's a real treasure and a gem here at Norfolk. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a hand up?
Well, I think Lauren has a hand up again, correct?
I do. I just wanted to make a comment about one of the other points on the bylaw, and that was the language you have for the dwelling unit. The way it's written now, it's one dwelling unit may be constructed for an employee or a caretaker. And while that is currently the way it is structured at Mass Audubon, we do have an individual living in the caretaker house at Stony Brook. That hasn't always been the case. And that's just another piece that I think is a little bit restrictive in the language that you're currently using. Prior to our individual caretaker living there, there was a caretaker with a family who lived in that house. And in the past, and in the, and we've thought about it in the future, should our caretaker ever leave, to use that as intern housing or seasonal staff housing, and to have it as a multi, kind of family or multi, person house, especially for bringing in, college interns, new seasonal staff members that are looking for housing as part of seasonal work. So again, I'm not sure what Kyle's plans are in the future, but I do think the way it's written currently, it's a little restrictive to just have an individual caretaker. So just thinking about that.
So in terms of two comments, one is you already have a house on the property, right, that you're utilizing. So in this particular case, it's being defined as constructed. So yours is already existing. So we could ask council, but I don't think it would be applicable to you, but I don't think it would, we could change the language. It certainly wasn't, it was a dwelling unit, and it would be an employee or caretaker associated with the use, not if they have a family. I don't think we're so much, there was a connection to the property in some way, shape, or form. But Tom, I would defer to you. I think it's, in terms of Mass Audubon, the house already existed, so it's not.
Right. So yeah, so their house would, I think would be grandfathered. I think for the purposes of this, it's, assuming a new use, this does seem to restrict it to a single dwelling unit and a single occupant. So if you want to expand upon that, and here we are now circling back to the definition of family, we could say, to an employee and their family. I think if you get into seasonal workers, we've expanded it to more of a dormitory use.
Yeah, I think, well, in my opinion, obviously the planning board's opinion matters the most because they're the ones voting on it, but that was the intent anyway. I don't think it was intended to, restrict it if there was a family, whatever shape, non-traditional, traditional, family, etc., was going to be there. It wasn't to, really the purpose of it was so that it was not a dormitory. There was some connection to residing there with the use.
Yeah, okay.
It does seem, this is Kyle Privish again, it does seem maybe simple and appropriate to just add for an employee or caretaker and their family, especially since we just discussed the definition of family, as someone else just mentioned, and that would accommodate more than one, not having to only hire a single employee that had to live by themselves or a caretaker by themselves. I think, again, the way it reads was not the intention, but just to be absolutely sure, maybe just making that small modification at the end. And we don't have a current need for an on-site caretaker, but that could change. So that would be beneficial to us as well.
Let us test that with the board. What's the feeling of board members on adding something like an employee or a caretaker and their families? That would be the appropriate language, would it not, Tom? You're muted.
I'd also say we take out the word employee, because caretaker would be an employee under that moniker. It's kind of redundant.
Well,
so I'm sorry. Yeah. So I do think you had the wording right for family. So I would say that a caretaker could be someone who might not be an employee, who's just there to take care of the property, and an employee could be someone who's not a caretaker, who's a manager. So I think by giving them both, you're giving them more options.
Okay, so that seems reasonable. And the language to be added would be and their family, and their family.
And their family.
And their family. Okay, all right. Okay, that's two changes we've got queued up. I think it's time to at least take a.
Walter, Jessica has her hand up.
Oh, God. Yes.
Oh, she said no.
So sorry, I just forgot to put my hand down. That's all.
Okay. Well, before we take any motions, is there anyone else in the audience who would care to make a comment or ask a question? Seeing or hearing none, then the chair will entertain a motion to strike the sentence, "This shall not include rental or use of the property by outside persons or entities for parties, weddings, or similar events." Do I have a motion to that effect?
So
moved.
All right, do I have a second? We do
Second.
have a second, all right. Those in favor, we'll do this by roll call vote. Mr. Peck.
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton.
Aye.
Excuse me. God, I got a frog in my throat. Chris.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right. Chair will entertain a second motion to amend item D to say one dwelling unit may be constructed for an employee or caretaker and their family. Do we have such a motion? So moved. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor? Let's see. Mr. Peck.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Chad.
Yeah, I already said aye.
We've already done yes.
Yep.
I didn't think it was getting that late. Chair votes aye.
It isn't.
Well, thank you, Gary. Okay. All right, Rich. Well, that one was easy. Let's move on to the next one.
All right. The next one should be relatively easy, which would be to add the use into the table of allowable uses as D2A14.
Or whatever the new number is under the new system.
Oh, yeah, that'll correct. We got this one for now, though.
Indeed, we do. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from those in the audience? Donna has raised her hand.
What are the column headings?
He's sliding up to it. Go ahead, show it up there.
Public and semi-public uses.
Well,
No, the individual columns.
That's a good point. Yeah, they're.
Yeah, we've got 3 columns of yeses and nos and SPs.
Oh, this is a residential district.
And the other 2?
The other 2 are commercial, business and commercial.
Well, I think Donna's raised a very good point. We need to include those here in this proposal.
Yeah, we can include it. It got truncated. The district heading, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, is the nature center allowed in those 2 additional zones?
No, we just added to the residential zone.
So should that other column have no? Or
by default, without having something on the table, it's deemed prohibited.
Well, you could clarify it by saying no, just so there's no.
That would make it consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yep. Needs to be consistent with the rest of the table.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't get to this with the recodification yet, see?
So do we need a motion to modify what's shown here to add those column headers?
Rich, do we need a motion to do that?
I think it would be useful.
Yeah.
Who was that? Was that to Tom?
Tom, yeah.
That was Tom.
Okay.
Sorry about
All
that.
right. Okay. Well, the chair will entertain a motion to add the column headings to the usage table for amending the zoning bylaw section D.2 schedule of use regulations.
Now, just before you vote, just not to go too far afield, but for consistency, which is not great, I understand that. The only ones in this table I would say would be the B2-B4 district and the C2, C3, and C5 district. The C1 district has its own special section of the zoning bylaw, so does the B1. And the next subject matter on your tape tonight, this conflict arise. So if you want to put it all the way across, you can, but in terms of consistency and inconsistent.
I'm not clear what you're saying. You're saying that the column headings are inappropriate?
No, what I'm saying is when, for example, when ground mounted solar was added to the table allowable uses by special permit, the special section specifically to the C1 district was not amended, which came to light when the Pond Street project came before you right now. So there's the table allowable uses, which has uses in it, and then B1 and C1 have a whole different section of the bylaw that lists all the uses that are allowed and not allowed, and uses by right and special permit. So if you follow the normal pattern in the table allowable uses, you would add no to B2-B4 and no to C2, C3, and C5.
Okay. Which in essence would be the new column headings that you would add to this. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. All right. So I didn't write those down. So you want to give them to me again so we can form the motion?
Sure. So you would be adding to
the first column is what? Residential?
The first column is residential. Yep.
Yep.
The second one you would add it to, which would be a no, would be B2-B4. And then the next column you would add it to, which would be a no, is C2, C3, C5.
I got it. Thank you. All right. So Chair will entertain a motion to add to the column headings in the table of uses for the first column, the term residential. For the second column, the districts B2 and C4. And for the third column, the heading for districts C2, C3, and C5. And at the bottom of the table, where can you scroll up for a minute? The bottom of the table for Nature Center to add a no in column 2 and a no in column 3.
So moved.
We have a move. All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Thank you. So we need to take a roll call vote. Let's start with Chad.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay. All right. Rich, do you want to take us to the next one, please?
So the next article is amending section F 7Q, where we talked about giving the planning board additional ability to make modifications, changes to parking requirements when it comes to outdoor recreation, conservation, and parkland uses. Right now, as you look to this provision, the bylaw, it only applies to municipal. So now we're expanding it to non-municipal uses to create flexibility for the parking.
Yep. And this is the one about allowing them to use crushed rock as opposed to macadam.
Crushed rock, yes. And also in terms of, for example, delineating the parking spaces, if you put to your mind, you know, not having to have a concrete curb stop, that kind of stuff too.
Right. Yeah. All right. Questions or comments from the board members, please? Hearing none, any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Okay, then do we need a motion on this one or just leave it as is?
No, it'll be a motion to recommend.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to recommend the changes to the parking area requirements in section F7 of the zoning bylaws as written in this draft. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
No, I'm sorry, pause. Don, is there a question on this one or is that your hand still up from before? All right, hands down. So.
Hands down. Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All those in favor, here we go. Mr. Weddleton. Aye. Mr. Peck.
Aye.
Mr. Montfort.
Aye.
Mr. Searle.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, very good. Next one, please.
Next one is John's favorite. No.
Yeah.
So simply to add the word setback in front yard for accessory buildings. Just to clarify, there's a front yard setback as the point of measurement.
Yeah. We've been through this before. This originally came to us, what, a year ago from the building inspector?
Correct, yes.
And we were very close to approving language that would have solved the issue, we think, but we couldn't quite get over the hump. And so we put it off, and here it is again. And the building inspector is satisfied with the addition of this one word here. So any questions and comments from board members, please? Hearing none, then any questions or comments from anyone in the audience?
See any?
See any hands raised, Rich?
I do not. No.
Very good. Then Chair will entertain a motion to accept the language of amendment to the accessory buildings definition here as written in the draft in front of us. Do we have that motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, we will take a roll call vote. Mr. Peck.
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton. Aye. Mr. Montfort.
Aye.
Mr. Searle.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right. I think that ends the discussion of zoning amendments, right?
That concludes the meeting relative to zoning amendments.
Very good. All right.
Permission to sign off, Mr. Chair.
Very good.
Yes.
Rich, before we let him go, anything else that you want to have him hang around for?
No, we're okay. We're sufficiently covered. Thanks.
Okay, so you get dismissed. You get dismissed early.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is 90, 92, 96, 100, 100R Pond Street and 12 Sharon Ave site plan approval and stormwater management permit for proposed large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic system, continued from our March 8th meeting. Who is here to speak to that? Rich, you want to start?
Planning board. Oh,
just hang on. Just Rich, anything you want to say before we start?
Well, just quickly, Daniel Serber here is from NextGrid as well. Brian Yagation from BSC Group. We did have a site walk last Wednesday, which was March 22nd, I think, right? I don't know. Forget my calendar. Sorry.
23rd.
23rd.
Sorry. March 23rd. The property line was staked out along Pond Street to get a relation to where that is, and then the limit of clearing was staked out. And there was discussion in terms of that meeting that there need to be consideration to moving the project back further from Pond Street, as well as a significant amount of screening. So essentially, someone traveling, with the exception of the new driveway that was going to serve as emergency access to the police station, and then access to the property, that you drive by and you see woods and you don't see solar array panels, and that the objective to do that is from, as the planning board sits as a site plan approval authority, to make sure that it's not detrimental to the neighborhood. It's not a bylaw provision. It's just you as a body exercising your authority in terms of what you believe is appropriate. So the message, I think the message was understood, and they're back tonight to talk about revisions to that to hopefully get to that point. I think it might be easier if I share, Brian, I'll give you a screen share so you can go through the plans. Might be easier than me doing it.
Okay.
I'll do that now, segue over to Brian, unless Daniel wants to speak first.
Yeah, just to echo what Rich said, we took the site walk. I think two members of the board were very clear, and they were heard loud and clear. So me and Brian rushed back to the drawing board. We adjusted our zoning, we reduced the project size, and we have now a minimum of 53 feet of wooded buffer everywhere east of the access road. So all the naturally wooded area. On our site walk, you guys said the other side of the proposed access road was already cleared. There wasn't many trees there, and we proposed all those arborvitaes. When that was discussed, you said that side of the access road is fine. So we have the 50-foot setback everywhere. On the other side, it's actually 53 feet at its shortest point. So, we've given the board exactly what they asked for. It was also said during the site walk that was the only problem that the board had. So I'll let Brian show the updated plan, but we heard you and we're giving you what you asked for. So.
Well, good evening. For the record, Brian Yagation with BSC Group, professional engineer, speaking on behalf of NextGrid. And basically, we, in the couple of days, we had time to put together or revise three of our drawings, which I'll just quickly go through. The first would be the overall site plan. So a couple things that we are proposing to do, which help us increase the buffer, is, as you know, there's an existing paved turnout, which is largely on the applicant's on private property right here. So we're proposing to remove that pavement at the property line, install a vertical granite curb to match what's existing. mulch that area and then plant it with Leland cypress. In addition to that, you know, we have, as Daniel said, we moved the array back considerably so that we're providing now a minimum buffer of 53 feet. And I want to show you that really where that is. So that's, so once we remove this pavement and plant this area, we'll be providing, and this is the narrowest or the most minimum point of the buffer right here, which would be 53 feet. Everything else, as you can see, far exceeds that.
Is that from the right of way or from the tree line?
Nope, that is from the proposed curb that we're going to install right there.
All right, so right there, we have 25 feet of grass. And again, I couldn't tell much from this plan, to be honest with you. I want a new cut line showing 50 feet of woods being saved. So I think as the other board members saw when we went out there, what they thought in their initial comments were very different on site. So I would like you to stake out 50 feet of woodland being protected. We don't need to protect the grass. That 25 feet of grass is no need. And we can make a judgment by seeing it in 3 dimension where the cut line is, because as I mentioned, I can't tell anyone from this plan, and I do it for a living. That's my suggestion.
Sir, I mean, when we walked the site, there was not 25 feet of grass. There is
25 feet of grass.
We were walking and we could touch trees as we walked between the curb and the tree line.
Your engineer told me at the last meeting when I asked him to calculate how much from the curbing to the stone wall was grass, he told me 23 feet. So you better check with your engineer.
I mean, we were there together, sir.
Anyways, that really becomes irrelevant if you go put stakes in where the cut line's going to be. So we can see the 50 feet of woods being saved, which isn't a lot.
So putting 50 feet on the plans is not good enough. You also want to see it in the field before.
Absolutely. The last time the plan didn't tell what it was all about, well, as we saw in person. And I thought you had an arrangement with the town to go redo the numbers since you were changing. Did you eliminate solar panels?
We eliminated quite a bit of solar panels, but that's our business on the back end.
No, I understand. You just mentioned you had to go with the town to redo the contract.
We'll have to talk about the numbers with the town, but we have nothing to talk to them about until this is approved or denied.
That's my comment.
Well, the intent here is not to deny it. The intent is to work with you to accommodate our request, and I think what John is proposing is reasonable. You're going to have to put down stakes for delineating the cut line as it is, so you might as well do it, and we'll take another look. The intent of what you've done is to comply with our request, and that's good, and we appreciate that. But seeing is believing, so I support John's request and wish you would do that.
I guess planning board member Byron, I guess I don't understand. You asked for a 50-foot setback, 50 foot.
No, I asked for 50 foot of wood buffer.
Okay, so if there's 50 foot of wood buffer,
you're going to put the stake line.
So if it doesn't look deep enough, if 50 feet's not enough, you're going to change it again when you see it on the ground.
I guess I'll have to take a look and see.
Okay, so it's an arbitrary moving target. It's not
arbitrary at all. As a matter of fact, if you're going to do the project, you've got to put that line in anyway. We just want to see what it is.
That's right. You mentioned the existing turnout there that you're going to take up some tar and put down mulch or whatever. The proposed new curb that you're referring to is that dark black line. Is that correct?
Well, you can't really see it here. I'll get it for you.
it almost looks like it's the property line, but I'm not sure.
Looks like the right of way line.
Yep, that's correct. Because in order to really see it, you have to zoom in CAD, but it's the curb is set. That's the intent at the property line on private property.
Okay, so the existing curb is outboard of that property line. Is that correct?
The existing curb, I'm going to trace it right here, is on this radial portion.
Yeah. Okay.
And similarly over on this side.
So are you proposing to draw a straight line across and completely wipe out that that turnout?
Correct.
Oh, so
it's on private property. And what we're going to do is we're going to plant that area. So again, it's not a setback from grass. It's going to be a setback from a planted tree, 6 foot high minimum Leland cypress, spaced according to your zoning requirements.
Yeah. Okay. So you're
that's an important distinction.
Yes, I understand. So you're proposing 53 feet minimum from the property line,
which is essentially at where the curb at the back of the curb. Correct.
I don't agree with that statement. Isn't the
it's shown
line,
right here, sir?
Wait a minute. Isn't the line described by SBC? Isn't that the curb out there?
It is, but that's if you're familiar with Pond Street, there's a paved apron in there that turns into the site. You can see it right here.
I see it. Yeah, I see
the outline of it.
Yeah.
And that curbing comes like this. This is vertical granite. This is SBC is the bituminous curbing, and it switches at the point of tangency. It switches to vertical granite curbing, which outlines this apron, and that's what we're proposing to match that curbing in kind.
Along the property line right there where that vertical granite curb. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So there'll still be, from a street point of view, there'll still be a little bit of a turnout there.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so you're proposing 53 feet from the property line, which is maybe at the moment, I don't know, some number of feet in single digits probably from the existing bituminous and granite curbing, right?
Yeah, what's the difference from the SBC to the property line?
Oh, you're saying what's this distance in here?
Yes, that's.
I'm not in CAD, so I can't tell you exactly, but I can give you an educated guess. That's about 10, 12 feet.
That's what it looks like, about 10 feet. Yeah.
Okay, understood.
And I just want to point out, so that's the proposed, that's 53 feet, which is 3 feet more than asked, but that's everywhere else. I mean, look at it over here. It's probably closer to 90 feet. Here, it's probably 75 feet for most of this area. I mean,
so you're not disturbing that stone wall there, right? Where the 53-foot arrow. So, I mean, that's a good reference point to look at when we are out there, is that those two parallel rows of stone wall will stay.
That's exactly correct. And I mean, you can look at everything you want, but this is the actual distance. This is based on an instrument survey with tremendous accuracy.
Yeah, okay. All right, John has made some comments. Anyone else on the board care to comment or ask a question? All right, well, hearing none, then John has made a request that you put the cut line stakes in the ground so we can take a look at that. You're going to have to do that anyway, so I would appreciate if you would do that as well. And then we'll take a look. I think we're probably going to be all right, but we don't know until we get out there.
I'm just curious, so what part do you not trust? That 53 feet is what it looks like, or?
Well, let me give you an idea. At our last meeting, Walter and I weren't happy with the setback. The other board members seemed to think it was fine reviewing the plan. When they went out there, I think they were quite surprised at where the line really was, which infers that the plan did not help them see what they were getting. So a line of stakes out there in the woods where we can see it's going to be saved would probably help everybody. And since you're setting it back so much, you should be proud to show off that new setback.
By the way, just a question that I don't know the answer to because I'm not in the business here, but right about at the 53-foot point, can you put the other drawing back up for a second? Yeah, right about at the 53 point, you've got a very steep slope.
It's actually been reduced. The slope used to be 2 to 1. Now it's 3 to 1. So it's less steeper than it was.
Fair enough. But
that's another thing. I started in my presentation, but it got interrupted. But that's one of the other benefits of this redesign that we did.
Okay.
Was that we eliminated the steep slope.
All right. Now, so my question, regardless of the angle of the slope, my question pertains, which is it possible to plant on that slope?
Absolutely. I mean, we have to plan on it to stabilize the slope. So, you know, this whole thing is going to be planted with grasses and pollinators. But the panels, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a minimum of 100 feet from the property line and more than 100 feet from the right of way. And it's 53 feet from the property line, which is 10 feet to 12 feet away from the actual curb, which accounts for the grass. I get you. It's just you understand the frustration is you ask for 50 feet, we'll give you 50 feet, then you want to go look at it. And if it doesn't look like enough, then we're going to move the mark again to more than 50 feet.
Well, I'm not sure we would do that. Let's not create hypotheticals until we go see what you've done here. As I said, you've got to put those cut line stakes in at any rate.
Not really, but
what are we going to do? Just clear it by feel?
No, what Brian's saying is we're realistically, after we purchase materials 7 months from actually breaking ground, we're just gonna have to do it again. So it's disingenuous to paint it as it's not no big deal that we're gonna have to do it anyways. That's all I think I was trying to illustrate, that's not a fair statement. It's not accurate.
Okay, what is the accurate statement?
That's like Daniel said, that's something that will have to be done in the time of construction, but it's going to have to be done again. Just because it's done now, it's not going to save us from having to do it in the future. That's all I was trying to say.
Oh, okay. All right. You agree with that, John?
Well, it all depends on their aspect of approaching the project.
Yeah.
But, it seems like a small thing to ask when you got to take 28 acres of our commercial land, which is very limited in Norfolk, and clear cut most of it and put panels. I think it's kind of a minor thing to ask. You're asking for a waiver to get rid of the 25-foot setback on either side of the lot line. That's 50-foot swath. We still haven't voted on that waiver, but you're asking for that. Seems like a little thing to do. And if not, don't do it.
Oh, we'll get it done. I just, the issue that I'm having is not getting it done. It's that if we've given you what you wanted, then what is it going to prove to see it, except what are you going to want if you don't like it? Even if it's more than 50 feet, then you're going to want to change the mark again.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Let's see what we've got before we reach that conclusion. By the way, you mentioned that you did reduce the number of panels in your field as a consequence of this requested change. Do you happen to have a percentage in your head that you could say we cut it by 10% or 9% or whatever the number was?
So it looks like we're going to lose, well, it's going to be 400 kilowatts. I'm going to have to look at what the total project size is, but yeah,
in monetary terms, over 20 years of production, it's a lot of money.
Okay. Well, the board will stand ready to take another run through the the proposed cut line when you're ready, and
Sure.
let us know.
We will get it on the schedule, and we'll let Rich know when that happens.
All right. Now we have 2 future opportunities coming up to review this again at a planning board meeting. We have one on April 12th, and we have another one scheduled without a specific date, but it's towards the end of April. And then the next one after that is May 16th, I believe. So those are the three opportunities. And I'm sure you would like, and we would like to see it come up at the April 12th meeting, which is the next opportunity, I believe.
I don't think we'll have enough time to stake it and you guys to come see it before the 12th, but the following late April meeting, we can get it done by then. I'm sure. Brian, is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say we can try. The 12th is kind of aggressive, but definitely by the next meeting, we'll be ready.
Okay, well, again, we will stand ready to take another walk in the woods with you when you tell us you're ready.
So in terms of just as you just discussed, the timeline and the meeting and so forth, so the end of the month is the end in terms of this body. 2 of the 5 members won't be here after the election in May. So it really needs to be wrapped up, hopefully successfully, at the end of April.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's true. I would not like to see a procedural issue screw this thing up and delay it any further. So hopefully we can get it done by the end of April.
I think with 2 meetings in April, I think we're close. So it should be feasible.
Do you want to come in on the 12th just to go through the waivers though, so that is at least, because you didn't touch on them the last meeting.
Are you talking to me and Daniel, Richard?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Mean, we can. I mean, they're all on the plans. I don't think anything has changed, but if you think we need to come in to talk about it, we can do that.
Well, I'm just thinking ahead in terms of you want to have things potentially lined up to get this done. You don't,
Sure. So you mean we'll talk through the waivers and then vote on them, or just so we'll be ready to vote on them next time?
I just to talk through them with the board, make sure they're comfortable. They won't vote on next time, I don't believe, but it would be just to make sure they've touched on them as opposed to getting to the end of April and then they haven't discussed them and then something comes up. Just trying to be preventative.
Yeah. If the board thinks that'll be helpful, that'd be great.
Yeah, a good suggestion on Rich's part. Let's clear up any remaining potential issues here prior to resolving this. Make the cut line issue the last issue that we have to solve.
Exactly. So what? I don't know what the
is the instruction to stake the new cut line on Pond Street only? And do you need all of that? Is there a way of shortcutting the process so that we know we're going to get everything done in time? So I didn't get clear instructions on what was being staked. Is it just across Pond Street? And do we need it all? Do we need it all, or are we only questioning the area where it's 53 feet?
I think we're if you could put the drawing back up, just so we're clear.
From the walk, it was primary area concern was Pond Street up until the driveway that the
Yep,
police would be
I think
It's the
accessing.
area, it's the section north of the existing and proposed entrance, so it's on Pond Street. So it's this area right in here.
Right, from
The
there,
area south of the driveway, there is no vegetation that's existing.
right,
So it's
So-
like we gave you last time. We staked it out the cut line from the driveway to the edge of the property. We'll do the same thing. I assume that worked for everyone.
yeah, it does.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's clarifying it. Yep.
You think?
Do we have to set an appointment time for the 12th?
That's what I was just looking at the agenda.
Probably 7:30. We've got a 7:15, and that can go on at 7:30.
All right, so we need a motion to continue the public hearing on the Pond Street solar field until April 12th at 7:30, correct?
Correct.
Well,
Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
You
Mr.
get
Peck,
it done before the 12th? Stake it out, maybe.
pardon me?
Maybe they can get it staked out before the 12th.
True, but.
You
we're
want to put it
continuing
on
the pub-
both meetings, or do you want to, go ahead?
We're
sorry.
continuing the public hearing, Rich, which allows him to talk about anything.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue the public hearing until April 12th. And we need a roll call vote. So Mr. Peck,
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Monfort,
aye.
chair votes aye. So we'll see you on the 12th, and we anticipate we will talk about the waivers and possibly have had the field walk again on the cut line. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at the agenda here. Next item on the agenda is MacArthur Ave definitive subdivision decision review. Are you ready? Or are you going to?
No, I got to get it to you for the next meeting. We didn't.
Okay.
I didn't get it finished, so.
Fair enough. So that'll be April 12th, right?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other items of business this evening?
We mentioned that we were going to have a second meeting in April. What date were you thinking of, Rich? Because it's not on the calendar. I just want to put a placeholder on my calendar.
Yeah, good idea.
We're thinking the week after April vacation, the last week in April.
So that would be the 26th, somewhere in there.
Yep.
So I'm out until the 26th. The 27th, 28th, 29th are open for me.
Me as well. So 27th, 28th would be fine.
Can we do the 28th only because I have the meeting for the ZBA on the 27th?
Sure, Thursday night.
Yeah.
28th works for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
John, you okay on the 28th?
I should be.
Okay. 28th it is.
All right.
And that'll be by Zoom as well?
Yes.
Okay, that should be fine then.
Yep. All right.
I don't know, Rich. I think you just trying to load me up with more meetings before I finish my term here.
We don't want you to miss us too much.
Yeah. That'll make retirement even more special.
There you go. All right. Any other business this evening, gentlemen and lady? Okay, then at 9:13 or thereabouts, the chair will request a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn in a second and a roll call vote. So Mr. Peck.
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton.
Aye.
Mr. Searle.
Aye.
Mr. Monfort.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, and Gary Sullivan smiles and says, that's a good idea. So.
I'm in favor of adjourning, yes.
Please.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all, and we will see you possibly in the field before April 12th, but we'll see.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good
night.
Good night.